Hello, you're watching TVP World Talks. I'm Laila Jazayeri. Tensions continue to rise across Iran, with the regime increasingly resorting to violence to quell the ongoing protests. With hundreds of people dead, a nationwide internet blackout, and a looming threat of American intervention, is Iran now at a crossroads where taking the right turn could lead to freedom from oppression? Joining us here today is Laila Jazayeri, Director of the Association of Anglo-Iranian Women in the UK. Hello and welcome to TVP World.
Thank you for having me on.
So first of all, let's talk about something that happened in the past and compare it to what is actually taking place today. The Mahsa Amini protests. The world back then turned its attention to what was happening in Iran. Women heroically going out to the streets protesting. But unfortunately, these protests ended in a tragedy. They were quelled by the authorities. Do you think that this time the ending could be different?
This time, it definitely looked different for two reasons. First of all, it is very well organized because there is a network of resistance inside Iran. They are called resistance units. They are in their thousands. They are across Iran, in all cities, towns. They are the ones who do not allow the uprising to die down. The second is that the protests have become more confrontational. The rebellious youth are clashing with the IRGC and security forces. They block roads, preventing the supply reinforcement. They set ablaze their buildings, their bases, their vehicles. In some areas, they have disarmed them. So the level of resistance, the fact that, as you know, the regime committed genocide in silence by shutting down internet. Despite that, and despite the fact that it became clear that the regime has actually killed 3,000, according to the network of main Iranian opposition, led by Mrs. Mariam Rajavi, 3,000 were massacred while they had imposed nationwide internet blackouts. But despite that, and despite threats for speedy execution, the protests have grown stronger and the spirit of the uprising has remained unbroken.
So what you're saying, that the sources that you're in contact with are saying that the number of casualties is not around 600, it's actually about 3,000 already.
That is correct, and this is the network of the main opposition that is inside Iran, and they obtained this figure through thorough investigation, local offices, coroner's office, the families who lost loved ones, and the families of those who disappeared in 196 cities.
So can this revolution be sustained without significant support from outside Iran? Can the world also simply stand idle and watch people being killed in that way? What do you think is going to happen? Is the world going to do more than just send, the expressions of support and verbal condemnation of what the regime is doing, but nothing tangible?
Well, you are absolutely right. Last time, in the previous uprising, the world, basically, the Western government remained silent. This time they should stand behind Iranian people. And as the leadership of the main opposition, Mrs. Rajavi has called on EU yesterday morning. She called, do something practical. What does that mean? She said, prescribed this deadly IRGC, impose prescription, designate this lethal IRGC that is killing our children in Iran as a terrorist organization. The West should close down all embassies of Iranian regime everywhere and remove the officials and unofficial agents of the regime that are lobbying for the regime. And I want to add to that, what the West could do, there is no need for military intervention, boots on the ground. What needs to be done is the recognition of the right of self-defense for these resistance units and these youngsters that are at the forefront of the protest. That would boost their morale and empower them to recognize that right for self-defense is the way forward. The Iranian people will take care of the rest because of that network of resistance. You see, there are thousands of them. They are operating. They are not allowing the protest to die down. All we need is to support them globally, come out and say they can defeat themselves by all means. That is what needs to happen. But let me tell you, no matter how much the regime kills, the protesters prove that they are not going to go back home. But one thing could fail. One thing could derail this uprising and ultimately defeat it. And that is the new conspiracy. This time the Iranian regime is not just using violence. What they are doing, they are using deception. How? The regime is deliberately promoting monarchist slogan through voiceovers, manufacturing support for the former dictator's son, Reza Pahlavi. Why? Because they want to divert public anger away from becoming radical, split the movement, reduce the turnout, ultimately poison it from within. Because let's face it, nobody goes in the street, risk their life for the former dictatorship to come to the power. Unfortunately, the Western media has fallen for this conspiracy. So the aim of the regime is to basically reduce the turnout and poison the uprising, and we cannot allow this happen, because the regime's aim is to overshadow the main resistance network that is behind the uprising, that is leading the uprising. How do they do that? They promote Shah's son, who is nobody, because it doesn't cost the regime anything if they say long live Shah, if they say he is the future king of Iran, because he has no support, he has no legitimacy, he has no organization, he's nobody. So this is the problem we are having now, and unfortunately, as I said, the Western media has fallen for it when there is an organized resistance inside Iran, and there is a platform outside Iran called National Council of Resistance of Iran, led by a woman, Mariam Rajavi. She has 10-point plan, a progressive plan for the future of Iran. She has a vision. She has a roadmap. Her plan involves gender equality, separation of religion and state, individual freedoms, freedom of assembly, freedom of speech, autonomy for Iranian Kurdistan, abolition of death penalty, a peaceful coexisting with neighboring country, and now nuclear Iran. You see, all is there. And Madame Rajavi and the National Council of Resistance are committed to transferring power to the people's elected representative within maximum 6 months after they overthrow the regime.
So no doubt this is going to be controversial, because there are also supporters of Reza Pahlavi. What do you think could happen if we have a situation whereby the West does not really single out any organization that should take the reins, so to say, that should be the leading force behind this uprising, that will say, okay, so if you want to take over from the regime, you need to come to an agreement? And a second related question, do we have any evidence that the regime itself is indeed actually in some sort of coordination with Reza Pahlavi, or are they simply using him as a controversial figure that will make some Iranians say, oh, we don't want to fight for this man, we have a different cause?
What determines change, regime change, ultimately, is the force on the ground. And who has that force? the National Council of Resistance of Iran, the thousands of resistance units, including women resistance units, at the forefront of this protest. That is what determining regime change inside Iran. Reza Pahlavi, actually what you said second, the regime is using him. He's an opportunist. I mean, the first week of the uprising, he was on holiday. He's actively undermining the uprising. For example, he has told people not to confront the regime security forces, despite knowing that these rebellious youths are fighting heavily armed security forces and IRGC empty-handed. You see the messages that he said, and you said the evidence. Go on social media, I can send you, there are thousands of them. The regime uses voiceovers. You can see there are clips to a scene of the protest. People are chanting death to the dictator, death to Khamenei. Then you see exact same clip, they are chanting long live Shah. So as long as they don't say death to dictator, death to Khamenei, they can say long live Shah. That doesn't cost the regime anything. But Iranians are not going to, they cannot, Iranians are aware of this conspiracy inside Iran because they are fed up of 100 years of dictatorship, monarchical and clerical. That is why you can see in some of these protests, they are chanting also, after they say death to the dictator, death to Khamenei, then they say, down with the oppressor, beat the Shah or supreme leader, signaling they don't want another dictatorship. This time, they want a free, democratic, non-nuclear, secular, pluralistic republic in Iran. And that would be materialized because we have what it takes. We have the alternative outside Iran. We have the forces of this alternative inside Iran who at the moment are at the forefront of the uprising and not allowing the regime to defeat it. So I just want your viewers know this conspiracy is quite complex. And why have you not heard about the main opposition? Because for decades, the Iranian regime has been running a toxic misinformation campaign against this opposition. But now, so the regime knows who the real enemy is. In fact, when the protest started 16 days ago, on the first day, the Iranian news agency, Fars news agency, wrote, this is done to MEK, referring to National Council of Resistance and Madame Rajavi's movement. They said, the way they operate, when there are a crowd, you can see.
And we have to park our conversation here. Hopefully we'll be able to examine the situation further as the events continue to unfold. Laila Jazayeri was our guest today here on TVP World. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.
I'm Laila Jazayeri. You're watching TVP World. Please do stay with us.